All right, class, welcome to lesson 1-4, rewriting formulas and equations. A formula, for number 1 here, a formula is an equation which relates two or more quantities, usually represented by variables. So in this lesson, we will be solving for a specific variable, and we're going to have more than just one variable in the problem. And this can get tricky for some students, but I want you to remember, even if it's a letter, we move it just like we would move a number. So if it's a letter and it's multiplied and you want to move it, you would still move it by dividing. If it's a letter and it's added, you would still move it by subtracting. If there's a letter involved in a fraction, you would still undo it by multiplying by the reciprocal. So we follow the same rules as we do for letters. So for number 1 here, it says solve the formula for R. And here's my formula. This R is what I want to get alone. So I need to move everything away from that. I like to circle and identify what I want alone. So the two things I need to move are this 2 and this pi. And I know they're multiplied. And so to undo multiplying, you divide. So I'm going to divide both sides. And I can divide them both at the same time. I'll divide them both sides by 2 pi. And then what we usually do is we put that letter we want alone on the left side. So we're going to say R equals, I'm just flipping the two sides around, and that's perfectly fine. R equals C divided by 2 pi. And now I solved it for R. This next problem here, it wants us to solve it for C. So I'll circle C because that's what I want alone. I'm going to solve for C. So we've got to keep in mind when we're solving these things, we have to undo addition or subtraction first. So I need to first undo this plus 32 and then undo the 9/5. So to undo plus 32, I'll subtract 32 from both sides. So I have F minus 32 equals 9/5 C. And to now undo that 9/5, because I want my C alone, I'll multiply by the reciprocal, 5/9. So I'm going to put parentheses around this whole left side because I want to multiply 5/9 by the entire thing. So these two cancel. I have C now all alone equals 5/9 times F minus 32. And again, I just flipped both sides around completely, and that is perfectly fine. So part B for number 1, find the radius of a circle with circumference of 26 meters. So we know C equals 26, and now I can find the radius because I've got R all alone. So R equals, we're going to replace C with 26, divided by 2 pi. So R equals about 4.14, and we want to keep our units. We're going to really make sure we keep our units on things here. This was 26 meters. So it's 4.14, 4 and 1400ths meters. We've got to keep our units with the numbers. B, it says convert 85 degrees to Fahrenheit, or 85 degrees Fahrenheit into degrees Celsius. So we've got our formula, C equals, so degrees Celsius equals 5/9 times Fahrenheit, that's 85, minus 32. So if I simplify that, you'll get C is about equal to, and I'm going to put these squiggly lines, and I should have done that over here, that shows that I rounded a little bit, so it's about equal to 29.4 degrees, and we convert it to Celsius. So degrees Celsius, we want to make sure we include our units. Let's do a little rewriting here. So we're going to rewrite a linear equation. And we're going to solve these things for y. Now this is a very, very important idea, especially if you want to use your graphing calculator, which you'll be using this year. In order to put an equation into the graphing calculator to graph it, you have to have it solved for y. So I'm going to circle again what I want to solve for. I want to solve for this y. And it says then find y when x equals -3. So I really have 2 steps to this problem. I'm going to rewrite my numbers, 5x minus 4y equals 9, and this y is what I want alone, so I have to make sure I keep that in mind. This 4 is multiplied by y, and this 5x, this is subtracted from it, so we have to undo this 5x first. So to undo a positive 5x, I'll subtract 5x, and I do that to both sides. So I have negative 4y equals, and I always like to keep things in slope-intercept form. I like slope-intercept form. It's easy to graph. Tells me a couple things real quick, the slope and the y-intercept. So I'm going to put my negative 5x first and my plus 9 last. I always put my x term first. Now I still am trying to get this y alone, so I'll divide by negative 4. So divide everything here. And I need to divide every term by negative 4. So those two cancel out. I have y equals negative 5 divided by negative 4. Those two negatives cancel out, so it's 5/4 x. Positive 9 divided by negative 4. Positive divided by negative is negative, so minus 9/4. And 9/4 and 5/4, those are both fractions, but neither of them will reduce, so I'm going to keep them in that form. So this is solved for y. The next part, though, our then part, this is when x equals negative 3. We need to finish solving this one. So y equals 5/4 times the negative 3 minus 9/4. So y equals, if you just simplify this, you could use your calculator to do it, you could do it by hand, it equals negative 13/2. Or that's equal to as well 6.5, and we can use that because that is an exact decimal. For number 2 here, we want to solve for y again, and then we want to find y when x equals negative 6. So there's another 2 parts to this one. I'm going to change my color pen here. So this is a little different though. It's 8y plus xy equals 10. Now I want to solve for y, but when I circle my goal, I got 2 of them. I can't solve for 2 letters at once. So here's the trick. It's like we're undoing the distributive property. We're going to take the y out of both of those 2 terms and put what's left over inside parentheses. So I'm taking the y out of both. And in this first term, I'm left with an 8 plus, and the second term is an x. And that still equals 10. So I just took that y out. And you can check this by distributing. Y times 8 is 8y. Y times a plus x is plus xy. So I did it correctly. My goal here, though, is to get this y all alone. So I need to move that 8 plus x. And notice, right here, there's no sign, so it means they're multiplied. So to undo multiplying, you divide. And we're going to divide by that whole thing. 8 plus x. We're going to divide by that whole entire quantity because I want to move the whole thing. So those cancel. I have y equals 10 divided by 8 plus x. I do have a second part though. It says find y when x equals negative 6. So if we let x equal negative 6, then we do y equals 10 divided by 8 plus negative 6. So y equals 10 divided by 8 plus negative 6 is 2, so that's 5. So here is solved for y, and there's my final answer. There's my final answer down here. Let's flip the page. So we're going to do just a few word problems here. Not a lot and not too difficult of problems. We should be perfectly fine. As I read through these, I want to highlight some key things to make sure I know what they are. It says a campus bookstore sells t-shirts for $15. That's t-shirts for $15 each and sweatshirts for $22 each. Okay, t-shirts are $15, sweatshirts are $22. A, write an equation for the bookstore's revenue R, and we want an equation, so we know we have to have an equal sign. Write an equation for the bookstore's revenue R, that means how much they make, selling M t-shirts and N sweatshirts. So I got 3 variables, R, M, and N. I need to make sure I have it. And if revenue is my total, then I know I want R equals, and I'm going to do M, the number of t-shirts, times how much it costs, so 15M. And I'm going to add that to, each sweatshirt is 22, so 22N. So I used all my information, all 3 of my variables. B says solve for M. So I want to get M alone. Let's circle it so we keep in mind. I want this M all alone. 15 is multiplied by M. This 22N is added, so we need to move this 22N first. So to move that 22n, it's plus 22n. I will subtract it from both sides. So I have r minus 22n equals 15m. My goal is to get that m alone, so I still need to move that 15. They're multiplied, so I'll divide both sides by 15. So those 15s cancel. I have m equals r minus 22n divided by 15. C says, in order for the bookstore to have $6,660 in revenue. Okay, $6,660 in revenue. So that means that's my R right here. From sales of these two items, how many t-shirts? Okay, how many t-shirts? So my answer should be, that's my question, my answer should be something t-shirts. Keep that in mind, and we know it just basically by the question. So that's what my answer should be. How many t-shirts must be sold if 150 sweatshirts? So 150 sweatshirts, my N. We said this is my R. So let's just plug them in. So M, my t-shirts, equals R, 6,660 minus 22 times N, my number of sweatshirts, that's 150, divided by 15. And if you plug that into your calculator and simplify it, you'll find that M equals 224. So make sure that you can do that all in your calculator at once. If you want to put it all in at once, you have to remember to put parentheses around the top. You can't just plug it all in and hit divide by 15 without those parentheses. You'll get the wrong answer. So please make sure you can put this into your calculator correctly. So my answer is 224 t-shirts. Okay, so here's a little bit of extra practice. Okay, some extra practice for you to work on. I want you to try these ones on your own. So pause the video and try number 1. Okay, so for number 1, you're solving for H. So I've got this H all alone. I want to get that H alone. This pi and r are multiplied though. So first we got to divide both sides by pi r. To move the pi and r, undo the multiplying first. So h plus k, and we're undoing that first this time because the h plus k are combined with parentheses and the pi and the r are outside of the parentheses. That equals s divided by pi times r. We want this h all alone, so we got to undo plus k, and I'm going to do that by subtracting k from both sides. So h equals s divided by pi times r minus k. For number 2 here, pause the video and try it. Okay, we want to solve for C. That's my goal, to get a loan. Now I've got 4/3. To undo that, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. But I've also got pi, a, and b that are all multiplied. So I'm going to undo the pi and the a and the b first. So to undo those, I'm going to divide by pi times a times b. So these cancel. I have 4/3 times c equals v divided by pi ab. Now to undo a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 4/3 is 3/4. And multiply both sides by that, and I have c equals, these two cancel. On the top of my fraction, I have 3 and v, so c equals 3v divided by, on the bottom, I have 4 pi a and b. We can just combine them together. The two fractions, when they're being multiplied, you can just combine the numerators and the denominators. 3, pause the video and try to solve for y. Oops, I'm sorry, don't solve for y. Try and solve it for x. We want to solve for x here. Okay, so notice there's an x here and an x here. We cannot solve for 2, so we've got to bring those two together. So 3 equals, remember how we did it on the other side, we brought x out, and we put whatever's left over in each term in the parentheses. So I have 2y left over in the first, and minus, nothing's left over in that second one, but we have to have a number to save the spot, and we're going to use 1 for that. trying to solve for x, so I want this alone. I need to divide this whole, move this whole piece. Since they're multiplied, we're going to undo it by dividing. So I'll undo it by dividing by 2y minus 1 on both sides. So I have 3 divided by 2y minus 1 equals x. And you could have x equals 3 divided by 2y minus 1. That's perfectly fine. Number 4, very similar one. We're solving for y, so pause it and try this one. Okay, again, we've got 2 y's here. We cannot solve for 1 y if I've got 2 of them. So take the y and put it outside in parentheses. Whatever's left over in each term goes inside the parentheses. So in this first term, we've got a 2x minus, in the second term, we've got a 5, and that still equals 8. If I want this y all alone, these two things are multiplied, so I'm going to undo them by dividing by 2x minus 5. I'll divide both sides by 2x minus 5, and those will cancel. So y equals 8 divided by 2x minus 5. All right, the last problem here. Convert 1 week into seconds and show all multiplications with units included. So this is something I'm sure you've done before, converting units. Well, let's run through this one together because it's definitely something you need to be able to do. So if we have 1 week and we want to get our units into seconds, we've got to break it down piece by piece. So 1 week is really on the top of a fraction. We're going to multiply it by another fraction, and we want the weeks to be on the bottom of this fraction so that our words cancel out. So 1 week, well, for 1 week, let's break it down into days. For 1 week, I've got 7 days. But I don't want days either. I want seconds. So I need days on the bottom. So if I have 1 day, well, that's 24 hours. Hours brings us closer to seconds, but it's not seconds. So our days are canceled now. Well, 24 hours, in 1 hour, I know I have 60 minutes. So my hours are canceled out now, but I don't want minutes. So I need to cancel my minutes out. And for 1 minute, I know there's 60 seconds. So my minutes cancel and I'm finally at seconds. I'm finally where I need to be. At this point, you just multiply across the top for all your numbers. The bottoms are all ones, so I don't need the bottom. So if you multiply 1 times 7 times 24 times 60, you'll find that's 604,800, and our units here are seconds. Make sure you include your units. So this is the end of lesson 1-4. Please make sure you really understood all the problems. If you have any questions, make sure you have stars by them so that we can talk about them in class tomorrow, and have a great night.